Hey guys, Tarke here, and I want to talk about the Lake of Kalandra balance manifesto. Unfortunately, mostly why I find it kind of boring and disappointing. There's lots of genuinely good changes in here that I agree with, but I kind of read through all of it, and I'm just kind of saying, where's the rest of it? So we've had a very long time with no real meaningful balance changes, and there's been a lot of expectations on this patch. Maybe it's false expectations, but in conversations we've had with Chris Wilson on Bay Class, specifically talk about like this is going to be a big balance patch, there's going to be a big meta shakeup. There was a lot of hype going into this patch for like, okay, we're going to get new and exciting things. Now, GGG in the past has purposely like withheld context and they've withheld exciting new things for the live stream announcement. So I don't want to like give a bunch of like false hope and say that there has to be something crazy there. But I'm hoping that's the case. We don't know until we get the full patch notes. We don't know until we see the full reveal. But it just feels like there's something missing here. But with that out of mind, because we can't talk about what we don't know, I'm just going to talk about what's presented in front of me. I've pulled out a few specific things that really kind of stood out to me, and I'm also going to make reference to a previous YouTube video that I made, because there's some stuff in here which I kind of said was going to happen, and I'm disappointed that it's kind of happened. So, there's been a general change to stuff like mana reservation efficiency, the stuff available through masteries. They've done stuff to change like life tap divine blessings. They're generally trying to make it so that you need to invest more into your auras, and they're trying to limit people running every single aura. What I would have really hoped they would have done there is kind of go, okay, so we don't like the fact that everyone's running determination, grace, defiance banner, so we might tweak those a little bit and give more interesting defensive options. And they talk about, for example, Flesh and Stone and Arctic Armor, and they're like, yeah, these kind of are undervalued, you want to bring these up so to give people more options, make people have more interesting choices, because that's the thing, I want it so that I've got like interesting 50% auras, interesting 20% auras, and I'm kind of playing like a fun little puzzle game of getting just the right amount of mana reservation so I can fit as many cool, interesting, and unique auras as possible. And the changes to both Flesh and Stone and Arctic Armor are pretty underwhelming. Both Flesh and Stone and Arctic Armor are actually pretty good. I think they're kind of undervalued. But there's a lot of this throughout the manifesto of like, we will continue to explore more efficient options in the future. And it's kind of like, it hurts to read through this manifesto of, again, changes that I mostly all agree with. And just kind of see nerfs and then not see like any interesting new tools. You know, nerf things down, introduce new tools, introduce some more options. Choice. I want to have a wide variety of choice when I'm building my characters. I want my characters to feel more unique. And reading through this, I feel like I'm just going to be doing the same kind of character as I did last league, but weaker. So that's not fun. Sorry about that audio, ba-boom. Here again, same thing with Mind Over Matter. Mind Over Matter was something that I used to play a lot of. Mind Over Matter was really strong for a while. This is like pre-Archmage, it was like a really strong solid build. Then we had the whole like Archmage agnostic thing, which was pretty cheesy, super strong. And I was like, oh, I really hope they do things to make like non-Archmage Mind Over Matter more interesting. I want like more interesting Mind Over Matter things. We saw a bunch of really heavy-handed changes to that. We then saw massive buffs to auras. So Mind Over Matter's been in a bit of a poor state. So like, okay, we've established that Mind Over Matter's in a poor state. What are we going to do? They've just pulled power away from stuff like Cloak of Defiance and put it into the Keystone. This makes it much better at League Start. This makes it much better in SSF. This is a change that I agree with. I read this and I go, yeah, that makes sense. It means that I've got more interesting chest piece options now. I'm not dependent on having a certain unique for my build to feel good. But again, we're waiting for more further changes. And it's kind of like, I mean, what have you been doing? Because you had a really long time of no balance changes. You're now doing stuff to these, like stuff like Mind of Matter, stuff to Arctic Armor, but it feels like stuff is missing. And I kind of feel bad about criticizing too heavily, because I have in the past been someone who's just said, you know, don't wait until you have the perfect fix. Just throw some things in there. Just do something to make it a little bit better. Just change the numbers a little bit. Give it a little bit more base AoE. And this manifesto very much feels like that kind of a patch. Just the impression that I get of like, okay, they went pretty heavy on minion stuff. Like that's a very clear and focused, like we've got an idea for what we want to do with minions. And then a bunch of stuff like, we don't really have an idea what we want to do, so we're just going to throw some minor changes in there to make things a little bit better, which I appreciate, but at the same time, it's kind of, that would make sense if we didn't have no balance changes last league. Having no balance changes last league and then getting very underwhelming, sort of like half changes, feels weird, because it's kind of like, all right, so what is now? Next league is 0.20, is that the big balance patch? Like, when's the big balance patch? When are we getting this big meta shakeup? When are we getting all these interesting new things? Because I'm just not seeing it. This is the one that really frustrated me, because I said this was going to happen. I've been preaching this was going to happen, and it's kind of like, cool, so they've done the GGG thing. So you have a standout problem, right? You've got an outlier. Do we nerf the outlier directly? No, we nerf everything around the outlier. Then when the outlier is still the best thing, we then nerf the outlier several patches later, at which point everything around it is completely crippled, and that doesn't get buffed back up. So, I made a video in 3.16 called Please Nerf Seismic Trap in 3.17. There have been some changes to Seismic Trap, but as we all know, Seismic Trap is one of the best builds. Or people saying Seismic Trap is still going to be one of the best builds going to the next patch. Just looking at these changes, if this is all there is. And what's happened is that they've said that, okay, we don't like the availability of trap cooldown and duration. What they really mean is we don't like how good Seismic Trap is. I don't think there are many people at GGG who have problems with people playing like pure flamethrower trap builds or pure lightning spire trap builds. Those builds are really fun to play. Playing just pure cooldown trap builds is a fun, interesting, and unique playstyle. I would have much rather they've said, okay, what we're going to do is, like with the minion changes, we're going to nerf the base gem. So we're going to bring the base gem down, but give way more options on the passive skill tree. We're going to give way more potential investment on gear, so that if you then have all the stuff on your new passive skill tree and your new items and gear and all that stuff, you might have a build of equal strength or slightly stronger, exactly like they said with the minion stuff. Instead, what they've done is they've just made it much harder to play cool, interesting, cooldown-based builds. The fact that just playing a pure cooldown trapper isn't a reliable archetype is ridiculous to me, and this is just a massive step in the wrong direction, and, you know, it looks like Side Trap is still going to be one of the best skills going forward. So, yeah, like Side Trap does more damage, Flamethrower Trap does more damage, cool, but, like, it's kind of missing the point, and it's just further, like, browbeating archetypes. I think that's a big reason why a lot of people were upset with the, Ashes of the Stars thing, where that enabled so many interesting alternate quality skill gems. And then when that item was super common, it made a lot of very interesting build options, and people were excited getting to try all these wacky builds. And then when that became super rare, they felt like they lost all this interesting build flexibility. Obviously, there are people who were upset that they just lost, like, pure power, but I think a lot more of it was the fact of the kind of builds it enables, getting to do more quirky things, getting to do more interesting things, doing, like, hit-based tornado, where you just use tornado hit damage to clear everything, doing weird poison spell setups. I want PoE to kind of go back more to that weird, quirky identity where you're using, like, interesting skill interactions. I feel like we're getting less and less of that. And I don't want to say, like, Diablo style, like Diablo 3, but I feel like we're leaning more into that as time goes on. I feel like, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's wrong, but I know I feel like my build's getting less interesting with time. They have buffed up several skills. Some stuff in here is, as we say, just like cleave plus space radius. Blazing salve, just give a little bit of damage. In the past, I've said, please just give these things just a little bit more damage, a little bit stronger. It doesn't hurt anyone. Buffing Scorching Ray to a little bit more damage. Does it hurt anyone? No. Is anyone going to play a pure Scorching Ray build? I mean, possibly. If they were doing it before, it's now better, so that's cool. But again, nothing here is exciting. It's like 5% more damage on Scourge Arrow. That's only going to make Scourge Arrow amazing. No. Is it a little bit better? Sure. Here are the actual interesting ones. These four, funnily all next to each other. Shock Nova, this is a really cool one. So now the Shock Nova ring always shocks. That opens up some really interesting build options. You might be able to see some interesting things where you have items where instead of shocking, you freeze. And, you know, just like weird, quirky little interactions. This is just fun. It just gives a little bit of flavor. And it just gives this skill a bit of identity compared to other lightning-based skills, which is cool. Soul Rend, they've just given it a bunch of damage, which isn't anything exciting, but they've given it a sizable enough damage buff that, yeah, Soul Rend could be a pretty solid build. Likewise, they've brought up Spellslinger. A lot of people really like Spellslinger. I never particularly like Spellslinger, but this might, you know, be enough to make some Spellslinger builds a bit stronger. And then Sunder. The Sunder one is a weird one. So people really liked the original Sunder. GG then reworked Sunder. People really didn't like the reworked Sunder. There was a big community push to get Sunder back to its previous state. And GGG never really addressed the fact that the community at large weren't happy with the Sunder changes. They kind of ended up just memeing it, which was really strange. Like, you had people setting up community races called, like, Revert Sunder. And then instead of GGG having, like, a conversation about, well, this is really why we like this identity and da-da-da-da-da, they just would make jokes about it, and now they're buffing the damage, and the wave travels faster. It will probably feel pretty good now. But it's just kind of odd. I don't know. A lot of this manifesto is just kind of odd. I read through it, and it's like it's not particularly exciting. It doesn't make me buzzed for the new expansion. I kind of read through it all, and I went, okay, and then I went to sleep. Whereas before, I would have like a balanced manifesto, and I would read through things, and I'd get so excited. I'd be opening up path of building, I'd be thinking like, oh, what do I want to do here? What do I want to do there? We're seeing some changes, stuff like Trickster, that could be cool. They've nerfed some things that I thought were a bit silly, like the automated flask charge stuff. But just, yeah, there's nothing really in here that's kind of got me excited. It's all stuff I generally agree with, and in some cases, I get kind of annoyed in the situation of traps. I will leave a link to this video down below in case you're interested in that. I'm very curious how you feel about the Development Manifesto. The general sentiment I've seen has been underwhelmed. Hopefully there's more stuff coming we don't know about, in which case it's okay, and it's not that bad. Which is like a bit... We haven't had any balance changes for like 6 months or whatever it's been, and people are like, well, it's not that bad. I was like, all right, it's fine. I don't think it's the end of the world. I don't think this is gonna like torpedo the game or anything, but it's just kind of like, all right, it's fine, it's there. But anyway, I'm Tarke. Have a good day. I'll see you all soon, hopefully with some more interesting Lake of Kalandra news. Bye-bye.